Hey everyone, Caleb with the Antique Book Collective, and today I'm getting to you guys with an economic update video. I know if you guys are new to the channel, what on earth is a YouTube channel about books talking about the economy? Guys, I study the economy, that's the main thing that I study. Antique books is just something I sort of do as sort of a hobby that also makes some really good money for me, and it's something that I know a lot of people are interested in. I get lots of questions about it, so that's why I did the YouTube channel. My main focus for my life, basically, is economics sort of thing. So with that said, that's a little bit about me really quick, and I just wanted to start this video off with, we are in recession, flashing alarms, scary, oh no! All that being said, guys, I just want to start off and say recessions are not the end of the world whatsoever. There are lots of different kinds of recessions that hit. There are so many different reasons for them to happen, and believe it or not, so far, recessions have not proven to cause the end of the world. So far, we are at a 100% run rate of recessions not ending the world. So it's great. So with that said, though, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor there. I know it might be going over some of your guys' heads, but recessions, people are changing the definitions all the stinking time. People try to change the definitions of all sorts of stuff that we've understood for years. Just because someone thinks they're trying to change it doesn't mean you have to follow along. You don't have to give in to insanity and stupidity, guys. Definitions exist for a reason. We can't change language just for the sake of a couple of people who want to prove a point. And all that is being said, there are governments out there who are trying to say, oh, we're not in an actual recession, and a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of theories for that, but something that a lot of people agree on is you're trying to say we're not in recession in order to save face. You're trying to make it sound like you're not a horrible human being. You didn't cause this. And yeah, governments can cause recessions. Governments do cause recessions. And as such, it can make sense why they would try to cover such things up. But at the end of the day, recessions also sort of happen on their own. Naturally, that's part of the business cycle. It is the constant cleansing in the system that helps us rebuild stronger and better. It's sort of like all the four seasons, you know. We have winter, summer, spring, fall, and yes, I know I did those out of order, but recessions are basically the winter period. We have to wait for the winter period to hit to clear out all the bad, let's just use for an example, talking seasons, let's talk about a forest really quick. We need to use the winter season to let all the forest have all the leaves fall off, which helps fertilize the soil, helps do all these cool things, and it also gives the plants down on the forest floor a chance to get some sunlight, some extra nutrients from the leaves and whatnot, and a bunch of other things. And also, with the winter, you get some inclement weather. That weather causes some of the older, not as healthy trees to fall, to die, to rot away, to cause the soil to get even better. It's a really nice system, and it causes cleansing. It causes the ability to grow back, grow stronger, and be more healthy overall. The economy, like that, is, as I said, like that. It's really nice. It's important. And when you start covering up recessions by printing more money, you're actually causing more harm than good. And I know that this is not the consensus view on a lot of sort of things. There are a lot of modern monetary theory people, and there's a lot of Keynesian economic people. They're the ones that go to college for 700,000 years and then stop seeming to understand how things work for some reason. They start being like, well, this doesn't actually impact anything whatsoever. Money printing, no, that doesn't cause inflation. Well, on the other side of them printing 50% of the dollars that have ever existed, we are sort of seeing money printing does cause problems, because that's what people have understood for generations and generations. It takes a PhD to understand something that stupid, if you know what I mean. A lot of people are saying stuff like that nowadays, so I think it's sort of funny. But with that said, I personally like to view things from a classical economics view or an Austrian economics view. Personally, I like the classical a little bit more, which is the one that's even older than the Austrian one, but either or, they both are pretty good. There's also the monetarists who say that inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Ergo, it's always caused by the money printing governments. So that is a few different schools of thought. Not diving into that too much, but back to the original thing that I was saying. I'm sorry I had to throw all that at you guys so early on. Just wanted to establish some baselines. But with all that said, guys, Germany has just seen two quarters of declining GDP once they've fiddled with their numbers a little bit more. So guys, for most of history, 2 quarters of not most of history, sorry. History goes back pretty far. Most of modern history, 2 quarters of negative GDP growth has actually been defined as a recession. Ergo, a lot of people still see that as the definition. I know that there are some people who are like, well, it actually has to do with this and this and this and this, because they are changing the definitions, adapting it. Some people are doing that to save face. Some people are like, well, it's not 100% what people are seeing. It doesn't feel like a recession, therefore it's not a recession. Guys, technical things exist for reasons, technical reasons. Just because it's a technical recession does not mean we all feel it, does not mean the world is ending, it just means some stuff's happening. Don't worry about it. Recessions happen, depressions happen. Yeah, we haven't had a huge depression for a little while according to the new definitions, but according to old definitions, we actually have seen several depressions. There are several older definitions of depressions which define it as, so you have recession, which is growth declining, but then you have depression, which means depressed growth. That's sort of where depression comes from, which means you were growing like this, you crashed like this, and now you're just growing like this. So that means once you have the recession, the next couple of years after that recession generally were depression. That's according to some of the definitions out there. I'm not telling everyone about my views on all these sorts of things. Personally, I am sort of Hakuna Matata on a lot of this. It's like, okay, if this is what's happening, here are the moves that I can take to come out better on top of these things. That is what recessions and depressions and all that sort of stuff are basically for. I know it's something that happens naturally, but you can use it as a chance to come back stronger. There are a lot of people with this current crisis that we're getting into, economic crisis we're getting into, that are like, now is your chance, guys, to add a zero to your net worth, 2 zeros, or in some cases 100 zeros. We'll see. It depends on how much money they print if we want to get 100 zeros. But with that said, guys, there are a lot of things that you can do. You can come out on top of that. But what does this have to do with a YouTube channel about selling books? So guys, I sell my books on eBay. eBay allows me to sell my books internationally. So the reason why I'm doing this video is, of course, I make these economic videos every now and then, but this one in particular is about Germany, and Germany, with them going into recession, they are one of the leading, one of the leading economies in the EU region. EU is European Union. So this region, guys, it's a powerhouse of a lot of different things. Excuse me for that. And there's a lot of different reasons, but because Germany is the leading one, when they hit recession, it usually starts dragging down the rest of the EU, and a lot of people are saying that the Eurozone, which is the EU, the Eurozone is actually in recession now, and that's being led on by Germany. And with that said, for me, eBay seller, selling books internationally, some of my books that I sell are not written in English. Some of them are German, some of them are French, some of them are Greek, all these sorts of things. For me, as a seller doing these things, I sell them internationally. When they sell internationally, a lot of these ones written in foreign languages end up going to foreign countries. Even a lot of the ones that I sell that are written in English end up going to Europe or elsewhere. So guys, when we've recession hit in Europe, recessions, depressions, all that sort of stuff, you normally see a decline in the value of a lot of collectibles. And when you have a decline in collectible values, actually I think for you guys it has to, there's the chart for you guys. When you see a decline in collectibles, antique books, they are a form of collectible. There is, of course, things that make it so antique books might not fall as much as certain other collectibles, such as like a baseball card, but there are a lot of things that are going for antiques that do make them a little bit more of a hedge. Not economic advice there, or financial advice, investment advice, not any of that whatsoever, but I have personally seen that antique books don't get hit nearly the same way as a lot of other assets do, which is not really one of the reasons why I got into the business of doing them, but it is a nice little pro to doing it myself because I do like the antique books. But with that said, for me, with this happening, since collectible values go down, and since in depressions, recessions, all that sort of stuff, people have less expendable income, which means the money that they don't need in order to survive, they don't need in order to meet the pay the bills, all that sort of stuff, meet their needed expenses. That's their expendable income. Since they don't have as much of that because they are tightening their belts, they are trying to save what money they can in order to pay the bills that they must. They are saving what money they can in case they lose their jobs. Because that's happening, it is most likely that a lot of people are not going to be buying the collectibles that they do not need. Yeah, you might see a couple people picking up some things if they're on discount, but by and large, you're not going to see the same volumes of purchases from your buyers for a lot of these collectible items. We are already seeing a lot of different high-end fashion brands and whatnot seeing declines in their sales, and a lot of other places for real estate, we're seeing the high-end malls actually losing market share. We are actually seeing a lot of higher-end malls closing across the country. For me, I live in the US, so we're seeing a lot of those close across the country. We're seeing a lot of these high-end real estate projects getting closed down because when recessions hit, that very high spending sort of stuff that ends up getting hit pretty hard. And I find that a lot of people are finding actually that these high-end clothing brands and whatnot, they are getting hit a little bit harder than you might expect, because generally the people with a lot of expendable income, they are a little more apt to continue spending in hard times because they are not nearly as affected because they were building up moats for such a time as this. However, a lot of the people that actually end up buying these luxury brands, based on the data, a lot of them are not actually the ultra wealthy. A lot of them are people who are purchasing these things in order to appear wealthy, for the quote unquote clout, if you will. I mean, if we're on social media, we got to talk about clout. We all got clout gains, you know. Word. I'm trying to act like an old person here with that one. But with that said, though, guys, those are some of the things that you are seeing. These high-end things are being affected. So what does that have to do with books? Believe it or not, I do not see a whole lot of people buying books for clout. Imagine that. It's almost like the people who are going for that aren't big readers. It's almost like they are all for just the impression of looking like they have something, and they don't care about actually looking into a book to learn something. But of course, that's just me as a reader trying to hate on people who don't read. But let's look at the facts. People who read generally do a little bit better. But with all that said, though, guys, antique books, I do see declines in sales for that sort of stuff. So in preparation for this sort of thing, I've mentioned this in other videos, I actually did start diversifying my business into some lower tier items that people will continue purchasing in recessions, because believe it or not, book sales, they don't just stay flat in recessions. Based on a lot of the data I've seen, a lot of the times you see it stay either flat or go upwards. A lot of other industries are saying they're, sorry, I have to do it like this for you guys. So flat is what you might expect for books. Upwards is what we sometimes see happen, but a lot of other industries are going down. So to see it stay flat or go up is actually a very good thing for those of us in this business. And the reason why we see it be about flat or upwards is because people are losing their jobs. People are having a little more idle time, or more likely, people are tightening their belts, so they don't want to spend $500 going to the movies. So they're like, well, I could spend 3 hours reading a book and spend less money than I would going to the movies. So like, movies might be going down like this, but we still are staying pretty even with books because people are doing this for their means of entertainment. But in addition to just entertainment, a lot of people are reading books in order to improve themselves, improve their lives, improve their knowledge base for work. Therefore, they are thinking that they're becoming indispensable to their businesses. That's one of the reasons why we see increases in sales of books. With that, I just want to also quickly weigh in. So if you guys are looking at me with my pile of old paper back here and thinking, oh, you're a dinosaur, you're going to go out of business, something else that I think is quite interesting is, believe it or not, ebook sales they're not quite flat. They're going up just a smidgen every single year. But paperback book sales are actually still increasing at a pretty good rate. Ebook sales, they did take a big chunk out of the paper book market back when they first started coming out, back when we first had the Nook and the Kindle and all these sorts of things. But after a few years, we actually saw it sort of level out, which is quite interesting. A lot of the things that we see happen, they go on parabolic growth, and they just grow and grow and grow. But for some reason, the ebooks, it had its parabolic growth, and then it just sort of plateaued out, which I find is quite interesting, because a lot of these technological advancements, I mean, you see them keep growing, but there are a lot of people who actually still prefer paper books. Believe it or not, I actually have been seeing some papers coming out where kids my age, so I'm a Gen Zer, a lot of kids my age, we actually prefer the paper books, which is, I thought it was quite interesting. And the reason for that, as I see it, I don't remember for sure if the things that I've read mention this one specifically, but for me, everyone expects kids my age to want to spend every single second of every single day on the computer, burning our eyes out as the screen just hurts. And because of that, a lot of us, we try to find things that are not computer related, because our jobs are all computer things. We try to find things that take us away from the boring chair we're sitting in. I don't care how comfortable our chair may or may not be. We try to find things away from that. You see a lot of kids getting out and doing some other stuff. And by kids, I mean people my age, not necessarily 3-year-olds who are always on their mom's iPhone. But we see a lot of people my age trying to find some pastime sort of things that are not necessarily on their phone, all that sort of stuff. Of course, quite a few people still do that, but there are a growing number of people who are finally at the point that they're like, no mas, I need some paper, I need some of this, I need some of this, I need things that are not me burning my retinas. So that is something that's quite interesting. And talking again about the computer thing, I think it's quite interesting, because I've seen a few articles out there where people are talking about how Gen Z, my generation of kids, we are actually more tech-phobic. We don't like technology more than a lot of millennials, which I think is, again, rather interesting. But that's all sideshow sort of stuff. So back to the whole thing about books. So books, they still are a very good market for a lot of people. I know you're not necessarily watching this entire video for me talking about books, me talking about economy. You might be thinking, what can I do about this? So guys, again, for me, I got into the lower end things that I knew would continue selling and continue selling well. And I've talked about this in other economic videos of there are other niches out there that will stay flat or potentially increase, such as used clothing. If you are tightening your belt and trying to save some money on your clothing purchases and purchases in general, what are you going to do? Are you going to buy your brand new whatever really expensive designer clothes over here, or are you going to go to some budget dealer like Walmart, which sells amazing clothes? This is Walmart right here, guys, so I am not hating on Walmart. Walmart's awesome. Or are you also going to potentially look at buying some clothes used? I know a lot of people might shy away from used clothes if they don't have to do it, but once you start getting to the point that you have to do it, there are a lot of people that turn to buying used clothes. It's something nice about clothes. If you buy the good quality ones, or at least ones that aren't trash, you can actually continue wearing those for years and years and years. So yeah, a lot of people might not be buying them because they bought a jacket 50 years ago and they're still wearing the same jacket because they're a dude like me and you just don't want to spend money on something you don't need to. But there are a lot of people out there that are buying all these different things. So guys, you can think for your own business, okay, let's say I'm into this one industry over here. What is something I can diversify into that will carry me through the ups and downs of the economy? What is something that someone might buy more of in a downturn? All that sort of stuff. These are things that you guys have to sort of conceptualize yourself if you want to stay even, or potentially, as I mentioned earlier, add a zero to your net worth, all that sort of stuff. Sorry, I need to do it with this hand for you guys. Add a zero to your net worth, go upwards, that sort of stuff. There are a lot of things that you guys need to think about, do yourself, and there's a lot of homework that you need to do. Of course, as a rule of thumb, I do not recommend people go all in on basically anything. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm not giving you advice on that. But for me, I do not recommend to different people that I know that ask these questions. I don't say, hey, so this is what I'm into. For me, I do antique books. I'm not going to tell someone, hey, I know you have $1,000 saved up as your emergency fund. Put every single penny of that into books right now. Yippee! I don't tell people to do that whatsoever. I don't think you should gamble with your nest egg. If you do, you'll lose your nest egg and you'll lose everything you have. Never go all in on anything that you do not understand, anything that you're new to. It's not necessarily the wisest thing to do. Of course, again, I'm not your financial advisor. Do whatever you dandy well please. But for me, I'm not about to risk everything I've worked towards on something I do not understand. If I have not done hours and hours and hours and hours, or potentially years of research into a subject, I am not going to think one day, you know, I've always wanted to start a crafting company where I take a whole bunch of pine needles and I make this thing that does this thing. It's like, no, that's not something that's going to appeal to me. I'm going to do it into something I know. And if I don't know anything about it and I want to experiment with it, I will put a little bit of money, just enough to test something out. And I will test with that stuff. If it does well, I will put more money into that. If it totally fails, I'll be like, well, I learned something big there. First off, I learned that was a stupid idea. Second off, I learned these other 5 things from this one business that failed that I can actually apply to the rest of my life, because I never thought I'd learn a lesson like that, but I did. There are things that you guys will learn from your failed ventures. It's, as I see it, it's not a failure if you actually got to learn a very, very important lesson, especially a lesson that you know for a fact you will never make that mistake again on, because the best kind of mistake is one you never repeat. The worst kind of mistake is the one that you keep on doing over and over. So with that said and done though, guys, again, it looks like we are entering a recession. Again, I've mentioned before, recessions happen. It's not the end of the world. What's so stinking ever? It doesn't matter how deep the recession is, the world, as far as we know, continuing on. Believe it or not, the Great Depression was absolutely horrible. Lots of people died, lots of people starved, especially when Roosevelt started doing his stupid ideas that still are impacting the world negatively. A lot of things happened. He caused a lot of people to go hungry. But believe it or not, the United States is still around. The rest of the world is still around. There are some great things out there. Do not depend on anyone to get you through any crash, any recession, any depression, any sort of that. Depend on yourself as much as you can, because you are the only one you can really depend on. The government, as we've seen throughout history, will either let you down, steal from you, or kill you. We see that in history quite a few times. I mean, I have more examples than I want to count. I know it might get a little political and some of you might get butthurt about it, but the facts are the facts. I don't care if your facts are different than the actual facts. you can't have facts that are not actually factual, believe it or not. So with that said and done though, guys, I hope this video was helpful. Please be sure to share whatever ideas you guys have on what you are doing personally to get out of a recession or get through the recession yourself. For me, I am looking at quite a few different business ventures, all things that I know have done well historically in recessions and have historically gotten either a high of right before the recession hits or a high of right after the recession hits or in the middle of, all these sorts of things. There are a lot of investments that I'm personally making for the recession play. I know that I started making these videos a little over a year ago where I mentioned this recession, that recession, da-da-da-da-da. I know I started doing these a hot minute ago and a lot of you were like, oh, there's nothing going wrong just yet, but lo and behold, we're at the point now where a lot more people are saying it's happening, it's getting bad, da-da-da-da-da. So it's up to you guys still to decide, is it happening? Should I prepare for it? And I wanted to end the video right there, but I also, before I do that, I've shared this quote with you guys before on other videos that I've made, but there is an old, I believe it's a Lebanese proverb, and and that one goes to the tune of, so let me just think really quick. Do not prepare for the good times, because the good times will will take care of themselves. Prepare for the hard times, because, yeah, the hard times will not provide for themselves. So that is to, let me just summarize it in the terms of crops. So guys, think about this in the terms of planting a farm. The good times means you plant, let's say, a yard of corn. Your yard of corn, and I know a yard is not a normal increment, but just a yard, just picture square yard with me. Your yard of corn will get you quite a few ears of corn. You'll be able to eat for a hot minute off of all that corn that you get out of your little yard. But that's during the good times. In the bad times, your yard of corn, you just got hit by a drought. All your corn ended up dying. You're not getting any corn this year. If you prepared for the hard times during the good times, if you set aside a couple ears, you're able to continue eating. If you only cared about the good times during the good times and you decided to invest every single bit of your corn during the good times, and then those good times immediately turned into bad, you lose everything right off the bat. It's really rough. You will go hungry, all that sort of stuff. And I know that describing things as a yard of corn might not be the best sort of thing, but bear with me, guys. If you are putting everything you have into just the good times and those good times suddenly fail on you, you will be up a creek without a paddle. That is why people like to take their food and put it into storehouses for the hard times. The hard times always do happen. As I already mentioned, recessions are a natural part of the cycle. People say they happen every 10 to like 18 years, some say 14 years, all over the board, but it is something we see quite often. A lot of us will live through at least one or two recessions in our lifetime, and I know I say one or two, it's obviously a lot more than that, but people nowadays, with them changing the rules of what an actual recession is, quote unquote, we don't see as many anymore that are officially declared ones, but we still see quite a few that are not declared but are still technical recessions, and we can still profit on if we play them correctly. So all that being said though, guys, I hope that was helpful. I hope that the entire proverb of prepare for the bad times, because the good times will take care of themselves, I hope that it was helpful for you guys to at least get you thinking a smidgen more. I know that we are getting to the end of the good times, or some people are saying we're already in the bad times, but let's face it, if we are here and we're going down, we might just be here right now. If we're going to get here, this still counts as a good time, if you ask me. There's still time to set aside stuff before we hit the absolute bottom of what we may or may not be getting into. Some people are saying that we're here and we're actually going to go up straight from here. I don't care. You guys can think whatever you want to think. These are just the facts that I'm sharing with you guys so far. I hope that this was beneficial. I also want to report as well that the Federal Reserve just announced for their rate hikes they decided to pause. A lot of people were theorizing that they were going to pause. I personally believed it was going to be a pause as well, based on the data that's been coming out, based on what they've been saying, all that sort of stuff. It's something that I do follow because it does have stuff to do with what I'm interested in. And because I do some videos on gold and silver, I've mentioned it in other videos. Personally, I see silver and gold responding positively to this pause because there is an entire school of thought with investing of buy the rumor, sell the fact. With a pause happening, so we were going like this, and then we started going like this with rate hikes. Now we're at a pause, so this is a plateau point. People have been theorizing that the government is going to pause and then start cutting rates. And historically, we see gold and silver prices, when they start cutting rates, gold and silver prices do the inverse, they start going up. And that's because gold and silver, and particularly silver, are inversely correlated to the dollar and the dollar's strength. So when they start doing cuts to the interest rates for the Federal Reserve, that causes the dollar to lose value compared to other currencies, and especially compared to precious metals. Ergo, we are expecting stuff like this to happen where it goes up. Again, that's not financial advice. I've said that 100 times in this video, but I want to say it again. Not financial advice. That's just something that people historically see. That is something that I'm personally expecting. It's something I'm personally somewhat banking on. I'm not 100% invested in it, and I may or may not have all of my stuff lost at the bottom of the lake in a fishing accident. So sad. But with that said, though, guys, I hope that all these sort of things get you guys thinking. Potentially, you could test out something you're not personally used to in your business. Potentially, you should not put everything into that new thing you're testing out, but it's totally up to you guys at the end of the day. So I hope this video was just a helpful little update, summary, all that sort of stuff on what's going on, what you might want to do, what you might consider doing. Honestly, for me, I like playing different mind games on, okay, what could I do in this scenario? What could I do in this one? It's something I personally like to do because it allows me to prepare for the scenarios that I may get through in my life, I may not face in my life, but it's nice to just know this is the game plan that I have. It's nice to proceed ahead with things when you have a game plan. And of course, guys, do not stick to your game plan. Don't set it in stone, because sometimes things don't go as planned. I mean, there's an old saying, man plans, God laughs. Don't set your plans in stone. But it is nice to have a good set of guidelines, a good, well thought out one that is based on like historical precedents and what has worked in the past. It's good to go off of that sort of stuff and be prepared. So with all that said and done, though, guys, I hope this video was helpful. If so, please be sure to hit the like. If you want to learn more about selling antique books in general, be sure to subscribe. And if you guys want to learn more about selling books as well, check out one of my other videos, and I'll see you in the next one.